So we're going to continue on with 17.3. We're just going to be looking at explain 2, which is subtracting polynomials using a horizontal format. So we are going to be on page 831, and we will go into page 832. And so let's go ahead and take a look at example 2. I just want you guys to just watch here as we go through this. So previously we learned how to subtract polynomials using the vertical format. And so we're going to switch it up a little bit. Like the title says, we have this horizontal format. And so the first thing I want to look at is A, which is 2q squared minus q minus 8 minus 2q squared plus q minus 4. Well, the first thing that we need to do is rewrite subtraction as addition of the opposite, or as I showed you guys previously, just distribute that negative to each term within the parentheses. And so we're going to get negative 2q squared minus q, because a negative times a positive gives us a negative. A negative times a negative will give us a positive, which is why we have a positive 4. And so what I'm actually going to do is group like terms. And so I notice, I'm going to go ahead and highlight here. I notice that I have 2q squared. Before we get there, I have 2q squared and I have a negative 2q squared. And so that's where we see this group here come to play. Okay, so we have 2q squared minus 2q squared. And then we're going to continue to group like terms, and I'm going to have a negative q and a negative q, which is where we get this group right here. And I'm going to go one step further because I have one more like term, or one more area, and I have a negative 8 plus 4. And so that's where I get my final grouping per se. And I'm going to go ahead and just horizontally combine like terms. Sorry about that. So I have 2q squared minus 2q squared. Well, we know that 2 minus 2 is going to give us 0. And so I'm going to cancel that because we don't, we get a 0q squared. So I can even write that. So I have 0q squared plus, well, I have a negative q minus q. And so I'm actually not going to do plus q. I'm going to do minus 2q. Plus negative 8 plus 4. And so a negative 8 plus 4 is going to give me a negative 4. Okay? And so because I don't need to include my 0q squared, I'm going to cancel that out, and I'm left with negative q minus 4. Okay? So that was just how we simplify finding the difference of this polynomial, or these polynomials given. Okay, and so let's go ahead and move to 832, and we're going to do B together. So now I want you guys to go ahead and write this with me. And so we're going to distribute that negative to each term. And so for my first term, I have a negative times 2b squared. So I'm going to get a negative 2b squared. I have a negative times b, so I'm going to get minus b. And I have negative times a, which is going to give me a negative a. And then I have a negative times 4, which is going to give me a negative 4. So we're still writing it in positive terms, right? And we're making sure that it stays positive. So let's go ahead and group like terms. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my highlighter. And I'm going to start with 2ab. Well, if I look over here at my second polynomial, I actually don't see any other terms that are the same. And so I know that in my final answer, I'm going to have 2ab. Okay? So that would be its own group. So I have 2ab plus, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look for b. So if I have any b terms, I'm going to go ahead and put those together. And so I'm going to rewrite that. So I have minus b minus b. So I have negative b minus b. And then I'm going to continue and look for like terms. And now I have an A, and I have an A here. And so I'm going to put those together. So plus A minus A. And my last group is actually going to be negative 4. And I don't have anything that I can combine that with. And so I know that negative 4 will be part of my answer. And so now I'm going to go through. And like I said, we're just going to bring that 2AB down because that stays the same. I have a negative b minus b, so I have negative 2b. I have a minus a, which equals 0. And then I have this negative 4. So I have negative 4 here. And so my final simplified answer will be 2ab minus 2 minus 4. Okay. So if we take a look at number 7, we're going to go ahead and distribute that negative. So we have 18z, we'll keep that in parentheses, plus 12, plus negative 11z, plus 5. Because when I distribute that negative, I get a negative 11z, and I distribute that negative here. Well, a negative times a negative always gives me a positive. Okay, which gives me that positive 5. And so if I go ahead and I combine like terms, I'm going to go ahead and say I have a z here and I have a z here. So I can put those in parentheses together. So I have 18z minus 11z plus, let's see, I have 12 and I have 5. Those are like terms, so I can go ahead and combine those. So I have 12 plus 5. And now I'm actually going to simplify. So 18z minus 11 is going to give me 7z plus 12 plus 5 plus 17. And so that is going to be my final simplified answer.